Everybody, welcome to another episode of Age of Quarantine. My name is Chris Enriquez. I'm your host. Thanks for spending your Thursday evening with me. Hope your week is going well so far. Um, Before I start the episode, I want to thank everybody for supporting the show and for supporting St. Vitus. Obviously, we're in some weird times, so all of the folks out there tuning in, donating, buying merchandise. There's a shit ton of St. Vitus merchandise available on the online store. So if you haven't picked up anything, or if you have friends that you want to buy stuff for during the holiday season, there's a lot of cool shit on there. Tees, hats, all sorts of shit. So check it out. I think you'll be stoked on the new designs. And and while I'm at it, I just want to say this has been such an amazing week. My last episode was with Pustulus of Gore, and that was something else. All of the episodes that you see here end up on either my YouTube channel. If you look me up, Christopher Enriquez, you can go find the episodes on my YouTube channel. Or if you prefer Instagram, there's a whole bunch on here as well. We are so excited about tonight. I have Lex Mincolla from 3Teeth. I'm listening to their cover of Foster the People's hit single Pumped Up Kicks right now. I actually like the 3Teeth version way better. But anyway, Metal War is such a great record. It was one of my favorites that came out in 2019. And I have a funny story about how me and Alexis met, which we'll probably talk about during our interview. But it looks like he is ready for me. So I'm going to go ahead and fade out the music here and get him on screen. Thank you again, everybody, for tuning in. If you have any questions, use the question mark box on the bottom of the screen. There's Alexis Mincolla of 3Teeth. All right, here we go. Hello, Alexis. How are you?
I'm doing good. How you doing, Chris?
I'm doing great. It's good to see you, man.
Likewise, man.
It's so crazy because I was just talking about how we met, which is a pretty funny story, but it feels like so long ago. Meanwhile, it was just early.
I know.
This year.
I was trying to think. That was pre-COVID? Is that correct?
It was right before COVID. It was like weeks before it in
because it was right as we came back from tour from Europe, and or maybe I think it was. I can't even remember. It feels like such a blur now. It's such a strange it seems like COVID simultaneously expanded and compressed time. Which I'm not a physicist, so I'm not sure how that works. But
well, let me start by saying I love how your hair has grown since the last time I saw you. You look
wonderful. I don't know if it's growing or getting shorter. It just seems like after I bleached it, it just it turned into like a top ramen noodle or something like that. So at some point, I'm just going to continue to grow back my natural color. But yeah.
Oh shit! I see our mutual friend Edie from Horror is out there watching. What's up, Edie? How you doing?
What up, Edie?
Well, it looks like the amount of people watching just escalated. So I'm going to start really quick by letting everyone know what's going on. This is a show on the St. Vitus channel called Age of Quarantine. It's a daily web series. I'm your host, Chris Enriquez from Revolver Magazine. Thank you for joining us. And of course, we have you, Lex from 3Teeth, joining us for the next hour or so while we kind of we could call it a glorified therapy session because I'm just going to kind of dig in.
I like that. I could use a little therapy. We could all use a little therapy, right?
Yeah, absolutely, man. But let me ask you, how have you been managing to get through this pandemic? I know it's a generic question, but
I've been good. We sort of had this little escape plan where, I actually just came back from almost 6 months in the desert where, there's something about the desert that, is very naturally inclined to, social distancing. It feels like a good place to do it. So myself and my bandmates had just rented a house out there, and we've been working on a record since June, which it just seems like, holy shit, that went by so fast. But I got back to LA about a week ago, which, I got to say, I've had a little bit of, I don't know, culture shock, kind of readjusting to metropolitan living again. I really got used to sort of, this, desolate sort of, desert scape that I just fell in love with.
Yeah, out in LA too, you have such great access to stuff like that. I've been there a million times, but I still haven't gone to like Joshua Tree, which is
Joshua Tree's it's a special place, man. Energetically, you know, aesthetically, just everything about it. It has a vibe that it's like all this sort of anxiety that is sort of palpable within these metropolitan areas during COVID, especially. The minute you get out there, it just like seems to melt away, and it's just it's such a relaxing place. You know, it's almost hard to work when you're out there, but for us, we got super inspired into some new conceptual stuff, and you know, obviously, it's a great place to do psychedelic drugs. So you know, there was a lot of soul searching out there that happened. But you know, we got a lot of really awesome progress made on this record that we're super excited about. You know?
Well, I'm going to ask you about that later on because I really want to know about that. You know, the whole pandemic, I'm sure, has forced everyone to try and be creative, especially if you're an artist or a musician. So I'm really glad to hear that during this time you've been able to hunker down and find some inspiration.
Yeah, I always say I do a live stream every Friday with my audience on Patreon, and one of the things I'm always been driving since this is like, get a hobby. You know, like hobbies are the one thing that's going to really help the sort of, you know, mental stability and sort of, you know, you got to keep the mind busy during these times where it's like, you know, staring at the wall is one thing, but staring at the wall when it's a government mandated staring at the wall is kind of like, it's a weird thing. So, you know, you don't want to let that kind of sink in too hard. So you got to keep your mind busy, your hands busy, develop a apocalypse skill set, whatever. I don't care if it's gardening, you know, weapons crafting or basket weaving, you know.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And that's actually the whole root of this show in the first place is like, you know, I started this literally like a couple days after the serious lockdowns were happening because I'm used to, much like you, I'm a musician that tours. I'm used to being out on the road. And this is just a strange time. You know, St. Vitus is a music venue. So, you know, we're like, what can we do to entertain people and also, you know, talk to our favorite artists, and this has been a great way to engage. Speaking of, I see everybody sending comments, and it's awesome. I love the engagement. So if you
actually, I find them very distracting. I'm gonna need everyone to quiet down so we can have a legit conversation here. Thank you. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Keep it going.
Well, if anybody does have questions, speaking of organization, I feel the same way. I want you guys to keep talking, but there's a question mark on the bottom of the screen, and if you use that feature at about half past the hour, I'll take some questions for Lex. But let's take it back a little bit. Actually, well, hold up. Before we take it back, you just dropped "Make America Snake Again," and there's a merch featuring President X and a snake oil salesman.
And we should all congratulate President X on a win. It's like he just keeps winning. I don't know how he does it, but he's good. You know, just keeps on driving home the victories every 4 years. Boom, boom, boom.
You want to talk about that and where people can pick up the merch?
I mean, President X was a character that we developed during the writing of Meta War, which is this sort of, you know, this sort of X integer. It's sort of every president. It's this sort of, you know, irreplaceable or replaceable. You know, it doesn't make a difference who's the president. It's always the same thing. I know everyone is super happy to get Trump out, and we should all enjoy that sort of cathartic schadenfreude. But, you know, realistically, I don't think it's a lot better to have the sort of like, you know, neoliberal, you know, alliance with the neocon war hawks that are going to come in and do exactly what we've had. You know, it's like, I wish we hated Trump as much as I wish we hated the system that created Trump as much as we hated Trump, because then we might actually get somewhere. But, you know, for me, President X was to be able to complain about presidential administrations, the executive branch of the government, is being sort of what, you know, the late great Frank Zappa said was, you know, the executive branch is nothing more than the entertainment branch of the military industrial complex. So for us, it's like, you know, we get caught up in the sort of the ratings, if you will. You know what I mean? It's like everything about Trump was just hype and ratings and just like people glued to the TV. The media is going to miss him the most, to be totally honest. CNN, what are they going to talk about now? So for us, it was like, let's be able to make fun of this thing in this sort of, you know, sardonic jab without it sort of being about any particular president. You know, the first verse of that song, we take shots at Obama, Bush, and Trump. So, you know, for us, it was never about any sort of partisan effort. For us, it was always about just sort of, you know, being critical of the whole thing.
Challenging the government from, not to get too involved in my own thoughts here, but I'm with you just because in terms of getting into underground music or aggressive music, it was always about creating a subculture to rebel against all that stuff, and it was a direct reaction to the government and how they were handling a lot of things improperly. But I like that approach because you're taking it into a seriously artistic manner and making it almost, I mean, it's being done in an entertaining way, even though there's a serious message underlying, which is not unlike my last guest, which I had Gore on the show, and
I saw some of that. Some of that. You guys are talking about smoking crack, which is really great,
Yeah. I mean, well, the thing with them is they have a lot of political tinge in their live show, but it's
I think absurdity in general is a great weapon against the sort of seriousness of politics. Do you know what I mean? It's like there's not really, you can't take a serious approach against, it's like people don't want to hear preaching against preaching. The only thing that can disarm preaching is sort of comedy and absurdism. So I think that it's a great tool and a great weapon to sort of create some critical thinking around it.
Yeah, absolutely. You might end up reaching a kid that doesn't necessarily go there in his or her or their mind, and because of your music or your video or your merch, it might entice some reaction in a positive way. So very cool, man. I love what you're doing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So you recently released a two-track album, Guns Akimbo, featuring cover songs of Ballroom Blitz by Sweet and You Spin Me Round by Dead or Alive. How did you end up getting involved with this film, Guns Akimbo? And maybe everyone's probably heard it by now, but those covers are great. You're no stranger to covers. You've done many throughout the years, so maybe we could talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so we were on I guess we were just on the middle of like an 8-week this meta tour. We were out there, in the middle of the summer, and I ended up getting like a DM in my Twitters from the director, Jason Howden, who the name looked familiar, and he was reaching out and kind of talked to me about this idea. And I'd seen his first film, Deathgasm, which I thought was super fun. And, he had sort of presented this opportunity because he was like, hey, I really love your album, Metawar. I think it would be really cool to have you on my new movie. It seems like what you guys are doing is sort of right on par with it. And he explained me the synopsis of the movie is this sort of like social media Running Man future, Daniel Radcliffe with guns screwed to his hands. I was like, cool, I'm in. Done. Like, you know what I mean? He is like, okay, but we need the songs by like in a week and they have to be covers. I was like, all right, I'm out. And after that, he was like, well, like it would be like a list of cover songs that you got to pick from because they had the rights to a certain amount of songs. So, I remember talking over with my bandmates as we were on the road, and we saw the list, and I can't remember what a lot of them were, but a lot of them were like hard nose, like, no, I can't do that. And then I remember seeing the, the Dead or Alive song, and I was like, maybe we could do a cool version of that. And, I sort of looked at our schedule and when they needed it by, and we had one day off after a show in Nashville at In-N-Out, or Exit In rather is the name of that venue, sorry. And, I was like, well, it's Nashville. They got studios there. We have a day off. And everyone was like, dude, we just want to like sleep. We haven't had a day off in forever, as touring gets absolutely exhausting. And I was like, fuck it. We'll sleep when we're dead. Let's try and do this. I'll agree to it. No one even like the label, the management, like at this point, like no one knew what was going on because it was just me talking with the director. And, so like when I'm on the road, making some phone calls, trying to like catch everyone up to speed about like the timeline, the fact that I need someone to like find a studio for us in Nashville and lock that in. And, thankfully, Mike Gitter, who I believe was also on your show, who's, sort of, my girlfriend, who we talk every day. He's our A&R at the record label, and he's a phenomenal dude and, just a real supporter of what we do. And, just a guy that can kind of make things happen when you need to. I'm like, Gitter, like finds a studio, found a Southern Ground Studios. in Nashville, and we played a show in Nashville. Woke up hungover and just like I kind of rallied everyone to go in the studio, and we put like in like one of those like 12-hour studio days.
Yeah.
Because like I'll never forget like I don't really like that song, You Spin Me Right Round, but I kind of knew that like we could maybe like make an industrialized version of it because it's kind of dancey, and the minute I like actually took the time to listen to the song and read through the lyrics, I remember going, what the fuck did I agree to? Like, because I like tried singing it different ways and everything was just like, dude, this is cheese, this isn't gonna work, like we're gonna have to call and be like, we're out, we can't make it happen. But then like somewhere around the 8th hour of like where the delirium kicked in, the song started to gel and started getting really cool, and we ended up like knocking the whole thing out in a day. Well, that's not true because Xavier ended up like taking his laptop and doing some extra sort of production stuff while we were on the road on headphones, and then we just kicked the whole thing over to Sean Beavan to mix it. And luckily we somehow made this like 10-day timeline on the track, sent it over to the director, and he sent over his producer, etc. And then they were like, dude, we absolutely love it, this is phenomenal, we're considering even holding up the movie, would you guys want to do another scene? They're like, we liked it so much. And I was like, well, when would you need that by? And they're like, well, we can hold it up a little bit because we're going to temp the fight scene to this Prodigy track. So we had the scene to this Prodigy song, and we know they wanted Ballroom Blitz. The Prodigy song was like 10 BPM faster. So if you listen to our song, we had to speed up the tempo of our Ballroom Blitz like 10 BPM faster because the scene was already cut to it. And we didn't have time to they didn't have time to re-edit to our sort of version. So the song is absolutely maniacal. And luckily we finished up the tour and they let us kind of take 2 days in LA. But the minute we wrapped the tour, got back to LA, got in the studio and cranked out that thing. And the production is a little less tight on that one, I think. Because it was definitely like even the two mixes sound different. Everything about it was so insanely rushed, but they loved it. It worked in the film. The movie's super fun. It goes down as for us as one of those sort of like, I don't know how the fuck we pulled that off moments, but that's why you don't say no to cool opportunities and you just fucking grind for them. So it all worked out. Now I have a really cool working relationship with Jason Howden, the director. When he was in LA, we all hung out and took him to a big barbecue at Adam Jones's place from Tool, and Adam being a movie guy and effects guy and stuff like that, and Jason's out. He comes from the effects line of things, and he's a New Zealand guy, and he worked on all the Lord of the Rings movies and stuff like that. And so it was like a super cool vibe, and we all linked up, became family and stuff like that. Now me and Jason still talk all the time, and perhaps like maybe do something cool in the future. So it was fun.
It's a cool thing to get into also because your music is very it's very cinematic. There's some bands that they just that make sense in that regard, and I don't mean to draw a comparison to 9 Inch Nails. I mean, obviously, legends, but they're also a great example of that as well. And I feel like 3Teeth is one of those bands that even when you're just listening to your albums and regular tracks, it's like they seem perfect for cinema. And speaking of covers, I also before we started going to your history, I actually love your cover of Foster the People's Pump Up Kicks. I like better than their version. Have they heard your version? Have they commented on it at all?
Supposedly, Mark Foster liked it, gave it its blessing. I don't talk with Mark or anything like that, but when I found out that he wrote that song and recorded it in 45 minutes, I had a new appreciation for it because, for me, when we were talking about doing a cover, first of all, I hated the idea of doing a cover before we did that. And, the label was like, you guys should do a cover. Covers are hot right now. And I remember sort of like putting out this sort of criteria into our fan group, which is called Operation Mindfuck. And, kind of was like, I want to do a song that's like, not too far back. It's sort of this sweet spot of like, pop culture that I don't like, but like lyrically, if we did our kind of process through our sensibilities, would become very menacing, a la sort of, Sweet Dreams Are Made of These by Manson. Like, everything, it's like if you do it and give it this dark tone, it could become really sinister. And someone threw out the idea of Pumped Up Kicks, and I was like, holy fuck, that's a really good idea, you know, because you have this sort of like song about a school shooter, but it has this sort of sonically this like sun-soaked linen beach party vibe that like always just didn't really match, to the point where people didn't really know that was about. So, you know, when we decided to take a crack at it, we were like, dude, this came out really awesome. And, you know, in the middle of recording it, there was like a shooting over in Thousand Oaks. Like, it was like the summer of school shootings, you know what I mean? The summer of active shooters. And it didn't take much to sort of dig into the sort of horror of that reality and draw from that while creating and writing it. And, you know, it sort of became a weird little piece of like the song just crossed 4 million streams on Spotify for us. So somehow it seems to have hit a sweet spot. So
it's awesome. It's freaking awesome, man. I love that version of it, and it's just such a different. That's what I want out of covers. It's like it's a completely different take, and it sounds like it could have just been written that way. That's when I kind of feel like a cover is done well.
And that's why everyone is always telling you, like, oh, you guys should cover this song by Nine Inch Nails, or you should cover this song by Ministry, you should cover this song. I'm like, first off, I don't want to cover any songs that I really like, because I'm just going to ruin it. Like, I already like that song. I want to cover songs I don't really like, but I can appreciate for certain ways, and then see if I can make a version of it that I like. But I do not have any interest in ever covering an industrial song or something that feels like it's, you know, this sort of masturbatory, like, oh, here's our other industrial version of an industrial song. Like, I don't really have any interest in doing that. Sorry. But, you know, for me, that was like something I always wanted to do, is like take these songs that I didn't really like and give them versions of them that maybe people who like us would like, you know?
Yeah. It's also a really glorified version of like kind of expanding on as a songwriter too. You kind of as a musician.
It's challenging. It's certainly
it's
challenging to do that, you know, to push yourself to kind of be able to do something that you don't necessarily like and to make it to something you like, you know, it's really tough. And I found that for me, I always like challenging myself. It's something that, you know, gives my life a sense of meaning. Ultimately, I think that will sort of be our MO moving forward, continuing. If we do covers, it seems like people like the covers. And, you know, I always think that we're always going to try and reach for maybe sort of more slightly unexpected things, you know?
Yeah, man. Okay, well, I like I said, I wanted to talk about all that stuff because it's recent, but I do want to take it back. Let's go there. Where are you originally from, Lex? And then maybe we can talk about some of your earliest memories of getting into music.
I'm from Boston, Massachusetts, or the South Shore of Boston, if you will. You know, born and raised there till I was about 18, and then moved to Italy, in Rome, where I went and studied political science, and then moved to Miami after I graduated and started working a little bit in advertising, and then to New York City. I did a tour of duty there, and then eventually landed me in Los Angeles.
Wow. Okay, you've answered that question many times. I can tell because you were able to get through that a lot, because you just summarized.
That's the abridged version, if you will.
Yeah, that you just summarized a lot of life, a lot more life than most people.
It's about 10 years. It's like I feel like I have 10 lives, 10 lifetimes within that, you know.
Yeah, and I knew some of this stuff because we have some mutual friends, and what's fascinating about it to me is that I think it all plays into how you're able to kind of cultivate your band and yourself, and how you present everything aesthetically. There's, you know, when you work in, first of all, when you live in a place like New York City and Italy and Miami, and then you end up in LA, but you've also worked in advertising and marketing, and you're a musician, those all are going to have an effect on the way you see things versus an average musician that's just in a band who writes cool songs. Yeah. And I feel like that's what makes you really compelling and interesting to me.
And that was always the approach that we took with 3Teeth, where we sort of wanted to, you know, build a band on this sort of, or build an art project on the chassis of a band, if you will. You know, for us, it was like always an attempt at making more of a multimedia focused project. And you know, the band is the perfect vehicle for continuing to create art. So that was always the approach with us. And, you know, my background as an art director certainly has informed a lot of the way that we present our sort of our art and our image and our work. And it's sort of, in an era where I think more people listen to music with their eyes, unfortunately. I feel like it's sort of worked to our advantage. And you know, it's just sort of the reality. You know, it's just that's the way people listen to music. You know, the internet is not an audio first driven system. It's eyes first. And then, you know, if you can pull them into their eyes and get them to click and listen to music, then they're going to like it. So, you know, for us, it's always been kind of creating visual traps, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. But also it's and treating it, you know, if you look at like even back in, you know, you could talk about theatrical artists like David Bowie, for example. You know, it wasn't just, oh, let me put on a weird outfit and get on stage. It was treated as something that was just as artistic as the music he wrote and recorded. So,
yes. Well, I think that has to do with the intention behind it. You know, it's never aesthetic for aesthetic's sake. Aesthetic should be used with the sort of density of intention and meaning. And I think that's something that we've always approached our aesthetic with. It's like, you know, it's not hollow. It's not just sort of this vapid, hey, make it look cool. Everything we do has a sense of purpose and meaning. So, you know, that approach has always been paramount to us, you know?
Yep. Guys, I see a couple questions coming in. I'm going to get to them in about 4 minutes, half past the hour. So if you have any, that's your chance. That's your window to try to get some questions in. I'm going to take the best ones because I always get some weird ones that I don't feel like repeating on air, but or maybe we will. We'll get a good laugh. Okay, talk to me about when and how you discovered, you know, however way you want to go with this, but underground music, goth, industrial, what have you. Like, talk about how you discovered all that stuff.
You know, I'm a kid of the '90s. I have an older brother who was actually, I saw him pop up in here for a second and just say beans and I think left. But you know, having an older brother who was also in bands and stuff like that, you know, I would just steal his CDs. Like, you know, like any younger brother, you got an older brother that kicks down some of the door, and even other friends, other older brothers. I always used to say that, like, in the '90s, like, the only way you get to find out about cool music is if you got beat up by someone's older brother. And I remember another friend's older brother, like, he had like suicidal tendencies, like cassettes, and we used to watch the music videos over his house because we'd like steal them from his older brother's room. So just like stuff like that, where like, you know, being able to sort of get glimpses into it. Of course, Beavis and Butthead was a huge, I mean, people forget how important that was to certain bands' careers, and sort of bringing underground music above ground, because, you know, those were always videos that, you know, got rare air. Obviously, Headbangers Ball was still pretty sweet, but you know, there was just always that, like, the discovery of cool underground music. Obviously, Boston had a lot of cool underground music culture, and bands like Sam Black Church, like sort of like early proto-hardcore stuff, you know, and going to see shows like that, you know, and just being like a little kid on a skateboard that would just kind of roll up to shows, you know.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And I skipped Boston in when I mentioned the place you're from, because Boston had a huge scene. I'm a hardcore kid at heart, so you spoke to me in ways where you're mentioning a band like Suicidal or you know, Sam Black Church is fantastic, but Boston had a strong hardcore scene, and the aesthetic of a band like, especially like Suicidal, is very bold, and I could see why.
And Mike Mirror, I mean, that dude was like so outspoken, and the message that he had to say, he was, you know, he was a poet almost. You know what I mean? So it's like, you know, being able to sort of like see people do their thing as this sort of like crazy possessed escape vibe, but also be able to sort of articulate himself as an intelligent individual with a lot of sort of social commentary was eye opening. You know?
Yeah. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and take these questions now, because my next question could go on for a while, and I don't want people to think I'm ignoring them here. So let's see what's in the question mark box. All right, we'll just start with a couple comments here. At KXLLOVX, I don't know how to pronounce that. 3Teeth was the first and last concert I've ever been to. Can't wait to see one day in Prague. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah.
So is that? Oh yeah, so they came to the show in Prague for the first time. That was such a cool show. Speaking of underground music, that venue was legitimately underground. It felt like like the vampires were all going to come out. And the funny thing about that show is, this is like last February, that the guys from Horror were there because they were playing in Prague the next day. So they came to our show and we all hung out, and then we went to their show the next day. And it's just kind of fun when you run into your homies on the road in a cool European city and get to go to each other's shows and hang out. So hell yeah, Prague is by far and away one of my favorite cities in the world. If you guys haven't been there, put it on your bucket list because it's absolutely amazing. It almost looks fake. It almost like, it feels like you're in some sort of like dream experience, like how beautiful that city is.
Yeah, and again, shout out to Horror. Fucking, I love those guys.
Oh yeah, yeah. We just they were out in they came out to Joshua Tree a few weeks ago. We recorded some music together. I'm gonna keep those cards close to my chest, but you know, it's pretty banging.
Fuck yeah, man. All right, so this is an interesting question. I like this one. Let's see here. DJ Pattiette, I hope I said that properly. Do you ever worry that a large portion of listeners won't or refuse to get the concept of 3Teeth?
I don't worry about it, but I am certainly aware of that. And I think that a lot of things that we do have sort of you know, various levels of concepts to them, where, you know, some people might take it at face value, they might get it wrong. But at the end of the day, I think art is what we'd call polysemic, and you know, that's up to the interpretation of the viewer or the listener. And I think that for me to try and control that would sort of defeat the purpose of something being polysemic. So I certainly don't worry about it. I am aware that that exists. And, you know, oftentimes people will tell me things about my art that I didn't even realize myself, you know, that I can like learn facets. Like I remember reading certain interviews about our first record, or reviews of our first record, where people were dissecting, you know, some of the message, and it helped me learn about things that I maybe didn't even really think about, that like I was sort of subconsciously doing. So it's like the whole thing is okay for it to be, you know, happy little mistakes and misinterpretations and confusions and understandings, and all of that is like kind of what makes art in the first place. So no, I don't really worry about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can only you can only do so much about the way people perceive things.
Yeah, I don't, you know, for me, it's like the idea of like controlling the message. It's like telling someone how to interpret a poem. Do you know what I mean? It's like,
right.
That's up to the reader, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. This is this could be a loaded one here, but where's Jean Grey? Your level of concern over Trump's moves at the DOD?
I mean, his executive Karenism that's going to occur. I personally think, you know, it's going to be an embarrassing moment for him when, you know, he sort of drags his feet on the transition of power, in terms of him firing secretaries of defense and you know, sort of doing his textbook play, totalitarian, fire everyone who's not allegiant to you or doesn't want to sort of also drag their feet on this. And, you know, hearing people like Mike Pompeo sort of say that, oh, there's going to be a peaceful transition into another Trump administration. You know, for me, it's I almost find this portion of like the most entertaining of it. It's the sort of the final act in this sort of a ridiculous piece of entertainment. So I'm not super concerned about it at the end of the day. Anyone in this country who tries to sort of like make these sort of autonomous cults, because the minute he loses his power, his executive power, you know, economy and go up against the government, it just doesn't fare well. People have tried to do that, like David Koresh, that didn't work well for him. You know, at Ruby Ridge, it hasn't worked out. It's like, you know, it doesn't work out for people who really try and go up against the government. Even if they were government prior to that, it's just generally, you know, that's a big fight to take on. So, you know, I think it's going to be interesting, and I do like a little chaos, so it should be fun.
Absolutely. It's really funny, random pivot flex. It was actually Sergio from Deftones calling me on my phone, and I just texted him to be like, I'm in the middle of an interview right now.
Yeah. Well, my brother just texted me too, and he obviously knows I'm doing this because I just saw him in here, which it's like, this is all on the same phone, you know?
Yeah. That's the world we live in. This is how we're doing our media right now. Okay, I like this question here. And that was, by the way, Lex, great answer, because I like how you put it too. It's like the last great act in his little piece of entertainment, because that's really what this is. I mean, Yeah.
It's going to be lip service. It's going to be hot air. I don't think there'll be, any, I don't think they're going to, at best we might get him being dragged out complaining about a succulent Chinese meal, which would be amazing, but I don't think we're going to get that,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Seriously, man. Okay, here's another one. I'm going to try to pronounce your name. Nihelinia Corvena and Dubious. I'm sorry, I butchered that.
Good luck with that one. That's about 48 characters with them.
Yeah. Biggest influences in the arts. I'm sure we're talking about like, well, I don't know. You take that as you will. I don't know if we're talking about art as in like actual, visual art, or if we're talking about music. But
I think it varies. It's rarely sort of one sort of singular superlative answer. I always say, like, I don't really answer. I don't like superlative answers. I don't like saying like, this is my favorite or this is the best. Like, I always hate answering those things. So it's always for me in a moment in time of what I find incredibly inspiring. For me, Alejandro Jodorowsky is someone who I found to be a tremendous inspiration as an artist. People that sort of universe build, if you will, people that sort of, create their entire own world. I've always had a huge admiration for. I always say that, you either create your own world or get crushed by the world of another. So for me, I think that, the idea of people building their own worlds is something that I find to be the greatest artistic inspiration.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thanks everybody for your questions. If I have time at the end, I'll try to get to some of the other ones that are sitting in there. I'm going to go back into mine. Talk about how you got started as a musician in terms of writing and creating, performing. Maybe you could talk about some early bands and that kind of stuff.
Well, I don't have any early bands, but I do have some more artistic more performance art-based stuff that I did prior. But my first band was 3Teeth, and it sort of came about me and Xavier linking up through a party that I used to throw called Little Death in LA about 10 years ago. And we linked up and, we started essentially just making music together because he lived down the street. And, that was the sort of like, we did like Pearls to Swine and, Master Decay and that song Nile, and continued to sort of expand the roster of personnel in terms of who we all like wanted to continue to work on this thing. This could be a very long answer, so we're going to keep it tight. And, we brought in Andrew Means, who's a phenomenal multi-instrumentalist and composer and classically trained, and also just an absolute madman of an artist. And he was initially drumming, even though he could do everything. And then, we sort of brought in different, we were auditioning guitarists because we were sort of outsourcing guitars, which Nile became sort of our proto guitar-driven industrial track. So we were using that as the template. Little weird factoid about that song is that the guitars on that song Nile were actually done by my friend Michael Keane, who, of the band The Faceless, who obviously has, a sort of enigmatic history of issues and problems and stuff like that. Michael's a sweetheart. I know him personally. I haven't seen him in ages, but, when I was like, who could play guitar in this? And I hit up Michael because I knew he loved industrial music, even though he's just a phenomenal guitarist. And he was like, cool, I can hear a little part. He's like, I'll try it over it. And I was like, dude, this sounds killer. So, when we have used that song, we sort of use it as our blueprint to find other guitarists, because clearly he wasn't going to be in the band. But that was Michael Keane who wrote the guitars on that. Yeah.
Very cool. Now, in terms of like as front people, like lyrically or in terms of singing style, who were some of your favorites that had an impact on you?
Al Jorgensen, I think, was probably the single greatest inspiration to being a front man. In many ways, I was like, well, if Al can do it, I can do it. Like Al did it, like, with like heroin needles sticking out of his arms, and he still did it. You know what I mean? So I was like, well, I thought Al's, everything about Al was just a huge inspiration, and Al is such a cool dude. He's a friend of mine now, which is just such a trip when you end up sort of like the people you really look up for become like your peers, and you can hang out and drink beers with them, and get some of those stories and stuff like that. So certainly Al. It's like the people who I toured with are always people that I feel like I've drawn inspiration from, because you learn from them, you see what they do on stage. So being fortunate enough to tour with Al, obviously I've drawn a lot of inspiration from Till, from Rammstein, who is just the coolest dude in the world. Just like, he's like larger than life, like action figure human being, but he's so down to earth. so inclusive, always wants to get you in his dressing room and hang out and take shots and tell you awesome stories. So, you know, somewhere in between, you know, I gotta also give props to Maynard too, doing that 30-day stadium tour with Tool back in 2016 when had no fucking clue what we were doing, and being able to watch Maynard and how he performed. And, you know, I always feel like I sort of like Venn diagram between all of those dudes, and just try and like, you know, draw inspiration from them and you know, how they've handled themselves and across the board. Sometimes what not to do and sometimes what to do, you know?
Yeah, those are some legends here, and you know what you have in common with Maynard and with Al is that all three of you have been on the front cover of my magazine, which is great.
There you go.
Super exciting stuff. And dude, Al, fuck man, Ministry still to this day, that guy just fucking brings it. It doesn't matter how old he is. It's like it's unbelievable.
The best, dude.
Yeah,
he's the best. He's also like one of those people that talking to him, he always puts stuff into perspective. Like you could have like a problem and be super bummed out, and Al will be like, "Oh, dude, don't even worry about that," because like a similar thing happened to me, but then like I almost died and shit my pants and blah blah blah. And you're like, "You're right. Maybe this isn't that bad for me. You've been through way worse." So it's like he always manages to sort of like kind of give you that sense of like, dude, you know, there's the Al Jorgensen version that always makes you go, "You're right. I'm doing fine." You know,
yeah,
because that guy's just like. That dude's just been to hell and back. You know what I mean? He's just done it so gnarly and so rough and so hard, and still manages to be such an ass kicker on stage, man. He's just the best. He's such an inspiration and just the nicest dude in the world. You know? Yeah,
man. They were, you know, dude. Like, not to get off topic completely, I'm just gonna say, like, I saw Ministry twice last year. Once on the Wax Tracks where they're doing some of the older shit, which was dope.
Yeah.
But then when they were on that Slayer, the final Slayer tour, I mean, look, everybody was great on that tour. Primus brought it, you know, Phil Anselmo brought it, Slayer brought it. But I'm going to tell you right now, and Ministry's not even my favorite band on that bill, by the way, in general. But they were my favorite band that performed that night. They just fucking destroyed. Yeah. Unbelievable.
Yeah, no, I saw them the final night at the LA Coliseum, the final show, and you know, Al invited me, so I was kicking it with those dudes backstage, and I actually walked Al to stage arm in arm because he was so like wasted. And it was so funny because I was like walking him to stage, and we were talking, and I was like, "How's this dude about to perform? Like, he's like seems kind of like super wasted." And he gets up on stage, and all of a sudden he's like, "Dude," and he's like just like snaps into it. It's like he's so clockwork and automatic, you know, when you're performing as long as he has. You know, the dude is just, you know, he's one of the best. He's one of the greats, you know?
Yes, that's like some Lemmy shit, you know?
Yeah, totally.
Okay, so tell me, when and how did 3Teeth start? I didn't know that was your first band. That's intriguing.
Yeah, it started in, I want to say, 2013. And like I said, the Genesis story is a longer one than we should probably get into, but it started by me meeting Xavier at this party that I was throwing, and he sort of sent me some of these things that he was making, as he's such a talented engineer and producer. And I was like, dude, this is super cool. It sounded super cinematic and just sort of, you know, it's like the Little Death party we had was sort of this amalgamation of sound, you know, from like, you know, 2009 witch housey stuff to like early industrial hard stuff to like even some like weird, you know, more concrete like Berlin techno stuff. So like all those elements that we were doing at the party were something that like in many ways was the primordial black ooze that gave birth to 3Teeth. And you know, it started with me and Xavier, and then you know, we brought in Andrew and then Chase. So you know, it was somehow, you know, we just started as a hobby, as a weird thing. We're like, you know, bucket list, let's put out a record. And the fact that anyone seemed to give a shit about it was like pretty astonishing to me, to the point where like, you know, we have like booking on like our second show was in like a festival in Canada. So we were like, all right, I guess like, you know, I wasn't even sure I wanted to do it live, or if I could do it live. And I was like, well, I guess shit, we're going to do it. And then like, you know, 2 shows into it, I was like, I fucking love this. This is so much fun. Let's just keep going, you know?
That's a lot that you've accomplished since then. What's if by the way, I feel like sometimes people wonder what I'm looking at. I actually have like a cheat sheet. I have questions on my television that I'm looking at. So that's
goddamn cheater, dude. Cheater.
I got to keep it organized. But what's the typical creative process like? Is there a template? Is it always different? Talk to me about.
It's I try and keep it always different because I don't want to sort of like fall into these ruts or paint ourselves in the corner of like, well, here's how we do it. You know, and there's so much talent in the band where it's like, you know, a song could start from a bass line, a song could start from a lyric idea, a song could start from a riff, a song could start from, you know, even just like a weird sample or something like that. So for us, you know, if there is one sort of, you know, primary sort of theme to what we do when we're creating, is that we like to create some sort of North Star image where, for me, like, you know, for this record, for example, I created an entire concept document that is literally a 9-foot document that goes from song 1 to 12 in this sort of ascension diagram, if you will. I'd be happy to release it after we drop the record, type of thing. But for us, it serves as a conceptual roadmap for what we're doing, and allows us to sort of always reference to make sure it's like, oh, let's make sure it sounds like the way that looks. So if we're all looking at something, it allows for us to sort of, you know, give it a vocabulary for what we're doing. Like, oh, it has to sound more like this, like the way it looks. So we try and create a little bit of that synesthetic experience and give it that cinematic quality. So for us, it's the one process is that there should always be a conceptual North Star, typically visually, before we start painting sonically.
I like that you said cinematic quality, because I mentioned that earlier. So it means I'm crediting myself. I guess I'm understanding what you're going for naturally on my own when I listen to it. Because I grew up a lot on soundtracks as well.
Yeah.
You know, I have favorite soundtracks, like the Crow soundtrack is fucking classic.
The Crow soundtrack, you know, was heavy rotation for me since it came out. I loved it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's cool. It's cool to know that, like, that it plays a role. And also, like, obviously, you know, we're just kind of like, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but it obviously feeds in to the videos, which we'll talk about a little bit, because the videos are, again, just as fucking cool as a separate piece of art to the songs. I love it. Yeah, man. And you work with some really, really unbelievable folks. But before we talk about that, Metawar, you know, not to sound all, I am a host, so I'm gonna bring up my host personality here. But it debuted at 23 on Billboard and 28 on iTunes Top Albums chart. I could go on and on. It was the #1 on the metal chart, and you know, yada yada. The band has not been around that long. You say 2013. The band has grown and is growing quite a bit. Have you noticed a lot of difference just in the past, you know, 2 years since Metawar came out?
Yeah, and for me, the best way to really have a metric for noticing it is like playing a concert in a place that like has, like, you know, like there's these shows that you're gonna play, everyone in the band that you're gonna go, like, they're gonna create like existential fucking like dread going through. There's 13 people out there in a city you've never played. Do you know what I mean? And it happens to the best of us. And then a year later, you're like, yo, it's packed. Like, so like when you feel that, when you have a lot of wind in your sail, you go, hey, this thing's here to stay. It's growing. You know, the word of mouth, you know, like, I don't care if there's 13 people in that room, play your fucking guts out, give those 13 people the best show possible. And then hopefully it'll at least double by next time, because everyone's going to say, dude, you got to come see these guys. And after that, you know, I think that, you know, putting out good music, and obviously music videos help, and, you know, keeping to sort of like engage with your audience and stuff like that. We're really fortunate to have, you know, I would say we don't have the most fans, but we have the best fans. Like, our fans are amazing. They're intelligent. There's a community of them. They support each other. There's a private group called Operation Mindfuck. You know, they do things for each other that like renew my faith in humanity, to the point where, you know, like one of the admins in the group is from Australia and we've never played there. So they all pitched in and did a crowdfunding and flew her to LA. And it's like just stuff like that. Like, it's so awesome what they do for each other, and, you know, the support that they have. It's like a real family. So for us, I feel super fortunate that group continues to grow, but grow in a way that, you know, is sort of on the rails, because the people have a sense of community and understanding of what they should be. So yeah, the growth has been awesome. And, you know, I'm super thankful for it, because those people allow us to do what we do.
Love it, man. And you're right. I noticed it just man, I'm almost at 200 episodes since this thing started, and this is a lot of engagement. So I can tell every night when I do this, when a band or an artist has a lot of fans that are just super engaged, and I think it's cool. I thank you everybody watching right now for supporting what we're doing here. And if you tuned in late, this entire episode will be up on Instagram. You can watch it from the beginning if you missed any of it. So just letting you all know, it'll be up on the St. Vitus Bar channel. Now, okay, you talked a little bit about touring with Tool earlier. I meant to get to that around this point. You were hand selected by Tool to be a supporting act on the 2016 tour. You've also done a ton of rad tours. We talked about Ministry, Rammstein. Tool is quite a beast. How did that come about? What was that experience like?
So me and Adam had become friends through a mutual friend that is a really phenomenal director and designer. And me and Matt Santoro, who I had been best friends with since 4th grade, him and Adam have done a ton of work. He actually directed that spot that you just saw for the Gibson thing. Matt does a ton of, he designed all the packaging and the animation in their new album and stuff like that. Me and Matt are just, like I said, best friends. So back when Matt got married, he lives in LA, but he had the wedding back in Boston, and me and Adam were groomsmen together. So me and Adam just sort of like really hit it off, became buddies, started hanging out, playing a ton of video games together online. And it was funny because like I never really like told Adam I had a band. Just because I didn't want it to be like one of those things like, hey, dude, check out my band.
Of course.
And I remember like playing video games one night, and he's on the headset. He's like, dude, why didn't you tell me you had a band? I was like, well, because I'm sure everyone's like, dude, look at my band. He's like, yeah, you're right. He's like, but I just saw his music video. It was awesome, blah, blah, blah. He's like, wouldn't it be super cool if we toured together one time? I was like, you probably say that to everybody. Well, behold, fast forward, we had just come back on a tour, and we just played on Halloween, and they apparently had just played this like Monster Mash festival in Arizona. And, I just got back to LA, and he called me up, was like, hey, you want to go to the movie? I was like, yeah, sure. He's like, cool, meet you at the theater. We were going to see Matt Damon in fucking Martian, and we're in the popcorn line, and he's like, so by the way, I talked to my bandmates and I showed them all your stuff. They thought it was super cool, and we want to take you guys on tour. And I was like, what? He's like, yeah, it's going to be us. It'll be like you guys first, then Primus, then us. And I was like, what? And he's like, well, like, don't worry about it right now. Let's just go watch the movie. I was like, what? I was like, what the fuck? Like, I just couldn't even focus. And the lady was like, do you want popcorn or butter on your popcorn? I was like, shut the fuck up. I was like, what? Like, you actually taking us on tour? And he was like, yeah. He's like, but you don't have to decide right now. He's like, we'll just go see the movie. And like, I just sit through like 2.5 hours of like Matt Damon growing shit potatoes on Mars. All I wanted to do is like text my bandmates or like make phone calls and be like, this is crazy. And I was like kept texting. He was like, put your phone away. So like he did it to kind of fuck with me, I think, a little bit, which is a very Adam thing to do. And so after that, he got on the movie, and he was like, yeah, he's like, the tour is actually in like 2 months. So like, if you guys don't feel like you're ready, just let me know. Like, I did not feel ready for this at all.
Sure.
Like, it was just insane. I'm like, dude, like, we're playing like 200-person club shows, and this dude's about to bring us to like 20,000-person sold out arenas every night, with some of like the most brutal fans in the world. But I was like, fuck yeah, we're doing it. Let's go. And to me, it was like one of those things that like you never are ever going to be prepared for that type of thing. You just have to go up there and do it, and just see what it's made of. And, I'll never forget the first show was in San Francisco at the Bill Graham. Primus wasn't on that show yet, so we were doing direct support.
Right.
We were doing 2 shows up there, and the place is fucking sold out. It's roaring. Metallica had lent them their ramp to get to stage, so like Metallica was there and shit, and like,
wow.
I just remember just being like, oh my fucking god, like walking up the ramp to get on stage with the big Metallica logo on it, and like everything about it was just so fucking insane and crazy. And like Adam 10 minutes before being like, hey, whatever happens up there, dude, you guys are fucking great. I was like, well, what do you mean? He's like, well, our fans booed Mike Patton one time, so like, don't even worry about it. I was like, all right, my heart is in my fucking chest. I did like the first 2 songs with like my eyes closed behind my glasses, just because I wasn't even sure like what I would feel like around the crowd. And then when the crowd was cheering after every song, I was like, all right, this is the best fucking thing ever. And just sort of, you know, fast forward 30 shows into that, I was like, great, all I want to do is play arenas now. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
of course,
the catering's amazing, the crowds are awesome, the fucking, you know, everything about it was so cool that, you know, it really felt like we sort of built our dragon scales from that tour. Like, we felt sort of invincible. Like, you could play anywhere in front of any crowd and just give it your all. And, you know, I owe a lot to Adam for that. You know, that was a big opportunity. And, you know, sometimes I wish we had it now because we're a way better band. Like, I think we sucked then. You know, like, we're so much better now, but whatever, it is what it is. And I feel like at that point, so much had changed in terms of, you know, we're getting pressed like Rolling Stone and shit like that at that point. And, you know, we were just like a band like a year into it, like, you know, barely know what the fuck we're doing. But I think one of the things that really gave me a lot of confidence on that is, you know, you see people doing it at that level, and I swear to God, people like Gunna don't know what they're doing at that level too. So you're like, cool, no one knows what the fuck we're doing. Let's just go do whatever we want. And then I also kind of just feel like it's like getting a helicopter ride to the top of the mountain. Like, you didn't climb the mountain yourself, but you are getting that perspective up there. So you can kind of from there, like, plot the course back down and sort of go, cool, let's figure out how to get back to playing huge spaces like that. Let's figure out how to write music that puts us into bigger spaces. Let's figure out how to generally learn from bands like Tool and Rammstein. And, you know, once you get a little taste of that arena blood, you want it back, you know?
Yeah, man, I know exactly what you mean. It's my band Spotlights actually almost ended up on a leg of the Tool tour because we're on Mike Patton's label, which is funny you mentioned him. And I'm not going to mention names, but somebody from Tool's management mentioned to me over dinner in LA that happened to Mike Patton on stage.
Oh, I have the craziest Mike Patton stories from the Tool guys, but I don't think I should share any of that stuff on here. But maybe next time me and you see each other, I'll tell you some absolutely insane stories that Danny Carey told me and stuff like that. So
we'll have to talk. Yeah. I'm glad it worked out for you guys though, because I heard stories about bands getting coined and people just fucking just not feeling it, you know, waiting for them to go on. But man, I'm so glad that worked out for you guys because it opened the doors for you and in really good ways. And we're winding down to the end now before Instagram kicks us off. But we didn't get to talk about the music video so much, but I do have some info in front of me. You know, American Landfill, a great video, and man, you had Matt Santoro, who worked on Wolverine and X-Men and 300 and shit.
Yeah.
Those videos that you guys have out there, goddamn. I want to just, before we go, we have like 3 minutes on the clock before they kick us off here. But the new music, you're working on new music. You want to fill us in a little bit on what's going on there and what to expect?
I have like this insane personnel on this new record, like working with this 2 producers who are not native in the band, as everyone, there's a lot of producers in my band, but working with these 2 other people that I want to keep my cards a little close to my chest right now because these announcements are going to be so big that I don't think I should blow the wad right here. But like the best way I could describe it is I kind of feel like Thanos, and I have like all the stones in my glove with my personnel on this record to make like something absolutely insane. Like when I announce some of the people that were working with us on this record, my audience are going to fucking lose their mind. So I'm super excited about it. In terms of, you know, what else I could tell you about it. Like I said, I don't want to get into any of the concept stuff. I don't want to get into too much of it, aside from the fact that, you know, we are going to put it out next year. So, you know, you will get a new 3Teeth record, and it will be larger than anything else we've done.
I can't wait, man. And I'm glad that you're using this time to be creative and not just in writing, but in doing all the other shit that you're doing. And, man, and also, but I didn't get to mention it, but I'm glad that we met in that elevator at your record label's building, because that was really cool and really random.
Yeah. No, and like all the other small world sort of connections that we have in terms of like mutual friends and stuff like that. So, you know, definitely it was, it was meant to be.
I'll hit you up when I'm in LA, and when you come to New York, definitely hit me up so we can get together, my friend.
Absolutely, Chris. It's always good to talk with you, dude.
You too, brother. Take care and stay creative out there, all right? Stay safe.
Right on, dude.
All right. Peace,
Later,
man.
everybody. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. All right, everybody. That was a great time. And if you enjoyed the episode, you can watch it from the very beginning in about a few minutes here on the St. Vitus YouTube channel. You could also go on my, on the St. Vitus Instagram channel. And you can go on my YouTube channel, Chris Enriquez. If you look me up on YouTube, almost all of my episodes are on there as well, past episodes. This has been an episode of Age of Quarantine. Monday through Friday at 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. We always have exciting guests for you, so tune in. Thanks for the support. If you like St. Vitus, pick up some merch, support live music. Stay safe, wear a mask. Peace out, everybody.